All right, so the Book of Philemon, this little book tucked in between Titus and Hebrews. What do we do? All right, so now we're dealing with the Book of Philemon, a little book tucked in between Titus and Hebrews. Now, this book is undisputedly Pauline, though, but the question we have is, what is going on here? Now, the traditional understanding of the kind of situation here is that Onesimus, a slave, has run away from his master Philemon. And perhaps, as verse 18 may suggest here, he has robbed him on his way out. But as he's going, he encounters Paul, who's under judicial constraint, probably in house arrest or in prison. Now, the traditional understanding is that Roman law would require Paul to send Onesimus back to Philemon. Paul does so, but asks Philemon to set him free. So that's kind of the traditional understanding of this book. A modified understanding here would be that Onesimus was not actually a legal fugitive. And perhaps Onesimus has angered Philemon, perhaps through misappropriation of funds, if that's how we understand verse 18. And so, under this reading, Onesimus has fled to Paul for mediation. So there are two possibilities here. I think that second one kind of fits well. That Onesimus has gotten sideways with Philemon, and so he's fled to Paul for some kind of intermediary. Now the question is, when is this book written? Now, again, provenance and date are bound up with the book of Colossians. Both talk of Timothy, Epaphras, Aristarchus, Mark, Demas, and Luke. And we know that Onesimus was a resident of Colossae. So when we talk about this, we're going to date it about the time we date the book of Colossians, so about AD 61. Now, again, the structure, the outline will be under your course documents there, but the structure is pretty straightforward. You have an opening, a thanksgiving, and a body. The body is really where we look, verses 18 through 20. You have an appeal for Onesimus. Paul says he's sending him back, but he's anticipating his return. He exhorts Philemon to welcome him as a fellow believer, as a brother in Christ. And Paul calls Philemon to exercise grace toward Onesimus. And then we get a closing. Only 25 short verses here. So not a ton that goes into this book, but a significant aspect here. So what do we deal with there? So when we deal with this book, what are two things? It really we'll just deal with two because it's not long. The first would just be mutual respect and love. Okay? Paul refuses to use his apostolic authority to demand Philemon to emancipate Onesimus here. He appeals to him as a fellow believer. In fact, he says in verse 8, "Therefore I have enough confidence in Christ to order you to do so what is proper. Yet for love's sake, I rather appeal to you." So verse 9, verse 8 says, "I could call you to just tell you to do this, but I'm appealing for you to do this." And verse 12, we find out that Onesimus has become dear to Paul. And so we understand at this point this decision to send Onesimus back to Philemon has to be hard for Paul. But it shows a mutual respect and brotherhood that he has with Philemon. So Onesimus has to do what's right and return to Philemon. And Philemon is expected to do what's right in the emancipation there. But also, Onesimus has to be ready to accept the consequences of his actions. So there's a mutual respect and love that's there. Even though Paul could exercise authority, he's not going to do it in that way. But then the second one, and this is the one that often gets referred to, Christians and social, we'll just call it social issues. How do we engage social issues. How do we approach these things? Now, when we look at the book of Philemon, Paul doesn't attack the issues of slavery, which in some ways is a bit unsettling to us. But also understanding, Paul understands this is very ingrained in his society, and Christianity does not have a strong outsized influence in this society at this point. And so Paul is exhorting Philemon to release Onesimus, and is showing that he believes that because they are believers, together they are on the same level. Paul seems to want to see the institution go away, but he also seems to know that it's so prevalent in society, there's really no hope of this being abandoned empire-wide. Paul, the influence that Christianity, that it's going to take for Christianity to reach that conclusion is going to take a while within that. In all places, Paul does exhort masters to treat their slaves with grace and kindness, and they are not to be oppressive. But again, at this point, Christianity is a minority religion. Later centuries are going to see its power and its prominence rise so that some of these issues can come to the front. While Paul could have written some kind of tractate here, some kind of treatise, the likelihood that it would have had much purchase in his day is highly unlikely. So Paul understands in his own day, he's exhorting people individually toward righteousness in these social issues, though he can't expect society-wide change at this point. So he's aiming here in this short book to, again, show that mutual respect and love for Onesimus and for Philemon, but also understand he's doing so with an eye to Christian social issues in such a way that later centuries will pick up on this and move forward with it. It's just not something that there's any real chance of at this point in time. So again, short book, but also a book that gives us an insight and gives us a launching point as we will go forward and continue to engage other issues long term. So that's the Book of Philemon, 300 and something words, but very important for us as we engage our society.